This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. Officials in Mali say nearly 100 people have been killed in a village in the central Mopti region. The entire village has been destroyed. Shops and offices close in Sudan's capital on the second day of a campaign of civil disobedience, as the military council says it's prepared to put more security forces on the streets. Also in the program, plastic fees. We visit the school in Nigeria, which is helping parents pay their children's school fees with plastic bottles. And in sports, can Cameroon's indomitable lionesses restore African pride at the ongoing FIFA Women's World Cup? Well, thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Now, we begin in Mali, where nearly 100 people have been killed in a village in the central region of Mopti. Now, the entire village of Sobameda, inhabited by members of the Dogon ethnic group, is said to have been destroyed. It's been difficult to identify the bodies as they are badly burned. Hundreds of people have been killed this year in fighting between the Dogon and Fulani people. Well, let's get the very latest on this. The BBC's Louise Dewast has been following developments for us from Dakar, Senegal. Louise, what more do we know about this?
So this attack happened in the early hours in Sobameda, or also known as Sobanu, a village of about 300 people in the region of Mopti in central Mali. According to a provisional death toll by the government, at least 95 people have died, 19 others are missing. And these numbers could increase because assailants, when they arrived in the village, set fire to many of the houses, and so many people are still being accounted for. The government says that the perpetrators of this attack are suspected terrorists, but an official from the area, a local official, said he believed it was members of the Fulani ethnic group who attacked this Dogon village. There have been clashes between both communities over access to land and water for many, many years. But recently, these tensions have increased because the Dogon people believe sometimes that Fulanis are linked to extremist groups, an accusation that they deny, of course. And the Fulanis on their side say that the Dogons have formed militias to attack them.
Louise, this is the second deadliest attack in recent months. I wonder what the authorities may have done when the last attack happened.
Well, you're right. The last attack was in March in a village called Ogosagu, also in the region of Mopti. Nearly 160 people were killed in that attack, mostly Fulanis, after an attack by a suspected Dogon militia. And after that massacre, senior government officials were sacked, people took to the streets, and the government actually resigned in April following pressure from the people in Mali, and a new government was formed, of course. But another important aspect of this is, the UN has a large peacekeeping mission in the country. The French have been deployed in Mali since 2013. But insecurity is for many people getting worse and worse. And so there is a growing view in Mali at the moment that the response to this multifaceted crisis is not only ineffective, it's also counterproductive.
All right, Louise Dewast there for us in Dakar. Thank you. Now to Sudan, where many shops and businesses in the capital, Khartoum, remain shut as the campaign of civil disobedience against the military continues. There are reports of similar shutdowns outside the capital, though an internet suspension is making information hard to get. Security forces have been increasing their presence on the city's streets. The BBC's Catherine Biaruhanga reports.
Khartoum is still a city in practical lockdown. with a violent crackdown by the security forces, the opposition have asked people to simply stay at home as a way to protest. They say that by making sure banks are closed, businesses are not open, that will put pressure on the authorities to hand over power to civilians. It's day 2 of the nationwide strike now, so we're here to find out how things are going. We're just driving past the main market in Khartoum. It's called Souk Al Arabiya. There'd usually be hawkers just out on the street selling things from books, shoes, pieces of clothing. Right now, as we're going past, there's hardly anyone on the street, and most of the shops are closed. So this right here is one of the main bus stations in Khartoum. It's busier than it's been over the last few days. There's some street vendors out selling fruits. There are buses, small taxis, ferrying people. On a normal day, it would be much busier than this. As you can imagine, in most African cities, people are trying to get home. There'll be a lot of traffic. We would like to get out of the car and film and speak to people here, but we've been told that secret police are operating in this area, and also the government militia, so it's not very safe for us to film in the open
19th of June.
19th of June.
Yeah.
When we've been here in the past, it's been bumper to bumper traffic. It's about 4 p.m. in the afternoon when most people are leaving work and trying to get home. Sometimes it could take you just 30 minutes to move half a kilometer. Right now, the roads are empty. So this is Mall Street that takes you to the main shopping center here in Khartoum. As you can see, literally all the shops along this street are closed. This is what civil disobedience looks like, making sure the economy pretty much grinds to a halt.
Hanga reporting there for us. Well, let's bring in Dr. Adem Abebe. He's a democracy and governance analyst, and he joins us from The Hague. Thanks for taking time to talk to us and Focus on Africa. Now, what results do you think this civil disobedience will yield?
Well, thank you very much for having me on Focus on Africa. Well, it's very difficult to tell. It's very early. I think if the disobedience movement is going to have an effect, the protesters would have to stay the course, and most importantly, they would have to remain united as they have been so far. The military and other actors, as you can imagine, on both sides of the aisle, there's a lot of diversity. And keeping that unity would be very important to make sure that it leads to bringing the military back to the negotiation table, and also back to accepting some of the tentative agreements that they had accepted earlier.
All right, so the AU has made a move. They suspended Sudan. What should be the next step? What kind of pressure should they put on the authorities in Sudan?
Well, I think the suspension itself puts a lot of pressure. I understand that the Transitional Military Council made a lot of effort to make sure that they are not suspended. But if you see the communique where the African Union actually suspends Sudan, it indicates that they will establish an African Union facilitation team that is already working in coordination with IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, and also with in apparent coordination with the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, who was there and is expected to go back to Khartoum soon. So I think they are putting pressure. They are working more at the moment, and whether they will that will lead to a successfully bringing the parties back to the negotiation table, we would have to wait and see.
There's the other powerful constituent, the international community that has interest, the UAE, Saudi Arabia. Is it easy to urge them to lean on the authorities, on the military, for instance?
Well, that's true. I think the African Union really is perhaps the only constructive and very productive commentator, negotiator at this stage. I think there's a lot of actors from around the world with different stakes, but the African Union really is the honest broker at this stage. And whether the African Union has influence on countries like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates is very difficult to tell. But what you can tell is that it has set the tone for the response of the United Nations, as well as a number of the Western countries that have stakes in Sudan. There would have to be negotiations, I think, to make sure that the African Union takes the lead in bringing the various actors together and to make sure that things are settled in a manner that the people of Sudan wish it to be.
All right, Dr. Adema Bebe, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's now take a quick look at other stories making the headlines across Africa. Libyan authorities have arrested hundreds of migrants en route to Europe. Around 400 people from Somalia and Ethiopia are now being held in a compound outside of the capital, Tripoli. It's believed they were headed for the Italian coastal island of Lampedusa. Rescue efforts are underway at a gold mine in the east of Tanzania after 5 miners died when it collapsed at the weekend. 5 others are being treated in hospital. It's not known how many people remain trapped underground at the unlicensed mine in Morogoro region. Now, how about this? Sell your empty plastic bottles to pay school fees for your children. It sounds too good to be true, but that's exactly what a school in Nigeria is helping accomplish. Morit International School in Lagos has partnered with 2 organizations to initiate the Recycles Pay project. Now, the school told BBC Africa that the scheme is a win-win situation. Victoria Wonhunda reports.
Most of them are now beginning to see value in the plastic bottles. They don't see it as one waste any longer. They see that this thing is actually a solution.
Parents at this school in Lagos pay fees in plastic.
I struggle to pay these.
I struggle to pay for my children's school fees. Sometimes I only pay half and later pay the remaining balance. But with the introduction of the project, the plastic has made it very easy for me to pay the school fees.
The Recycles Pay educational project, I stand to be corrected, but I think it's the first in Africa where a model is being created that will allow parents pay the school fees of their children in school using the plastic bottles, pure water sachets, the can, perhaps the carton as well. This, for us, is a give back to the community because this is what we're passionate about as an organization.
So the weighing process has started already. That's 13. 13.
A recycling company collects the plastic waste twice a month.
It has helped a lot of people, a lot of parents, and even me that is here. It has helped us.
We want to impact 10,000 kids between the next 6 years.
Well, this is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, rain helps South Africa to its first point at the ongoing Cricket World Cup, and that's in the sport. I'm Sophie Ikenye, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program. Reports from Mali suggest around 100 people have been killed in a village in the central region of Mopti. The entire village of Sobamedan, inhabited by members of the Dogon ethnic group, is said to have been destroyed. Security forces in Sudan say they are ready to increase their presence on the capital's streets as roads remain empty and many shops are still closed for a second day of civil disobedience. Now, Tanzania's central bank has suspended the exchange of Kenyan banknotes to Tanzanian currency. This is after Kenya introduced the new currency a week ago. Kenya's governor for central bank also reached out to central banks in the region to be alert about cash movements from Kenya. Now, we've been hearing from traders in Dar es Salaam on Tanzania's coast on how the move will impact them.
The fact that the government has made this announcement, it means both sides should be aware of the launch of new Kenyan currency, and people who are still holding the old currency must be given access to change it to avoid losses. It's important for businessmen to know the deadline so that they are able to do the exchange in good time.
It's good they have informed us in good time. because there are some businessmen who are still bringing us the old notes. But I think it's important to make more announcements so everybody understands, so that we can be in a position to exchange the currency.
Well, let's speak to BBC Africa business reporter Zawadi Mudibo in Nairobi. Zawadi, Tanzania has made its move. What will be the implication of this when the other East African countries follow suit?
Well, like you heard from the traders right there, Sophie, the Kenyan currency, given that Kenya is the economic powerhouse within the East African community, is used to trade across all the regions. And in Tanzania's case, then what you're likely to see is an oversupply of the Kenyan currency as opposed to the demand. And therefore, technically, the Kenyan currency might be devalued in the next couple of weeks. And also, this might also happen if this case is also replicated amongst other member states of the East African community.
What informed this decision by Kenya, and has it worked anywhere else on the continent?
Well, Kenya's decision is based on a constitutional requirement. When Kenya promulgated the constitution in 2010, the requirement was to get rid of any portrait of a person on the Kenyan currency. As you may understand, the founding president of Kenya, that is Jomo Kenyatta, is currently the portrait is currently on the notes of the money that is being used currently. But then if you look at cases, say in Ghana in 1982, there was a backlash. In fact, people lost faith in the banking system and turned to physical assets and foreign currency. In Nigeria in 1984, under the military leadership of the now President Buhari, there was also a backlash when they effected changes to 4 different notes of the Naira, and we also had a similar case in 1993 under the dictatorship of Mobutu Sese Seko in Zaire, currently DRC Congo. So speaking from experience, this has not really worked well within the continent.
All right, Zawadi Mudibo for us in Nairobi. Thank you. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Time now for some sport. Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. And it's day 4 at the Women's World Cup in France, and Cameroon, who are Africa's 3rd team in the competition, will be hoping to restore some of the continent's pride when they take on Canada in just over an hour's time. So far, it's not been a good start to the tournament for Africa, with continental champions Nigeria and South Africa losing their opening games at the tournament. The BBC's Mimi Fawaz is covering the competition for us.
It's the turn of Cameroon here in Montpellier, as they'll be taking on Canada in just a few hours' time in the stadium right here behind me. 4 years ago, Canada were the host, and Cameroon, that was their first time taking part in the World Cup. They made it through to the last 16, but this time around, they'll be hoping that they can do a lot better than that. They'll have a mixture of youth and experience as they come into today's match, and it was only January that they appointed their head coach. Their preparations, though, have been late. They just started preparing for the World Cup just over 4 months ago. So I caught up with one of their biggest stars, Gaëlle Onganabwit, and what she made about their preparations starting so late.
We have a good preparation, a few months like we never do before, because I think everybody knows this World Cup is a big tournament and big thing for development of the Cameroon football. But tomorrow we see Canada. I respect Canada, but we don't care in front who we have. We are Lioness. We're going to give everything to be the best on the pitch.
So lots of pressure on Cameroon, with many fans hoping that they can be the first win for Africa in this tournament so far. Over the weekend, the 2 other African representatives, South Africa, who lost against Spain, they are debutantes in this tournament, but the current African Female Player of the Year, Temi Gatlane, got a goal in that match. But for Nigeria, the Super Falcons, they lost to Norway. But that hasn't stopped Nigerian football fans that I caught up with outside the stadium. They think that they can turn things around as they face South Korea on Wednesday.
We are proud of our country. So no matter what, Nigeria for life will still remain number one. We still have a lot of people to play with. So we are very happy. Ale Nigeria! Ale Nigeria! Ale Nigeria! Ale Nigeria!
Nigeria, yes, Nigeria has not done very well today, but we're going to win. We're still going to do very well. Nigeria is going to go higher than this.
What can they do? What do they need to do against South Korea, who they face next?
Yes, they just need to be more composed. They need to sit down and plan. They really need planning.
So many African football fans will be watching eagerly over the next few days and hoping for better results for Africa.
Fawaz there in Montpellier in France. Now, in the men's game, Nigeria have arrived in Egypt for the Africa Cup of Nations, which kicks off in just over 10 days. The Super Eagles squad includes captain John Mikel Obi, who has not played for the team since last year's World Cup in Russia. But there's no place on the team for Leicester City forward Kelechi Iheanacho. The 22-year-old is still searching for his first international goal since scoring against Argentina in 2017 and was the subject of strong criticism from coach Gernot Rohr earlier this year. Meanwhile, Wilfred Bony has made it into the Ivory Coast Final 23 despite not having a club at the moment. The former Swansea and Manchester City striker is set to play in his 5th Nations Cup and was part of the Ivorian side that beat Ghana to win the tournament in 2015. Now, a couple of friendly results to bring to you. Ghana coach Kwesi Appiah said the main point of his game against Namibia yesterday, which they lost 1-0, was to check out his remaining squad players before he has to name his final 23-man squad. In other games, Cameroon had a 2-1 win over Zambia. Uganda drew 0-0 with Turkmenistan. And finally, South Africa got their first point at the ongoing Cricket World Cup after rain forced its game against the West Indies to be abandoned. Missing out on the chance to win makes it even harder for the Proteas to qualify for the semi-finals. They will need to win all 5 of their remaining games and need results elsewhere to go their way. Highly unlikely. Sophie, that's your sport.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Now, for a bit of a pickup to end the program, let's meet the South African artist who's swapping paint for coffee beans. Enoch Mlangeni says a lack of materials forced him to start using coffee, and he hopes that his paintings will cause a bit of a stir in the art world.
Most artists use paints, charcoals, and I use coffee as my medium. I started using coffee last year. I was busy doing some piece and the coffee spilled on my work and I saw it did something beautiful. Today I'm painting Nelson Mandela. He's a global icon. He inspires many people across the globe. Yeah, coffee has allowed me to be more creative with my work. Everything that can make a mark can make a painting. That's what I believe in. So I believe that you can be more creative than I am and do amazing stuff.
Fascinating. Well, before we go, a quick look again at our top story on Focus on Africa. Officials in Mali say about 100 people have been massacred or killed in a village in the central Mopti region. It has been difficult to identify the bodies as they are badly burned. It is feared many more may have died, as only 50 out of a population of 300 have been accounted for. Now, the entire village of Sabameda, inhabited by members of the Dogon ethnic group, is said to have been burnt down. Of course, for the very latest on that and other stories, you can go to our website. That's bbc.com/Africa. And you can also get in touch with me and some of the team on Twitter. I'm @CKenya. Let's focus on Africa for now. Thanks for your company.